D. Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy. I'm an addict. I got to look at myself. Are you kidding me? Seen all over the world. Oh, my God. Hi. Oh, boy. That just freaked me out. Okay. I just thought it was being voiced, not picture. Anyway, let me just start and try to get focused here for a minute. And hopefully God will like hurry up and show up. I want to thank the program committee for the video, the picture. No, I'll grow up. I'll get with the year 2019. Okay. I'm very techie, so I like all this. Not that so much, but I like techie stuff. Anyway, so I would like to thank Archie for the phone call and the weekend. I live in Miami. I'm from New York, but I live in Miami since 1976. So, you know, if you have 33 years clean, you're 33 years older than we were when we got here. And I did not get clean when I was 20. I got clean at 33. So I am 66 years old and very grateful that I'm here and not the other choice that I have. The other two choices, one is I could be using, one is I could just be underground someplace or in the wind. So Archie calls and he says, you know, can you come up? Can you stay awake? Can you do a meeting at 10 o'clock at night? And I said, yeah, I get a second wind and I'll be fine. I said, the afternoon's not good for me. I'm in a low point in the afternoon. And he says, what topics do you like to talk about? And I said, well, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I said, courage to change or sponsorship. And he says, oh, I like courage to change. I said, okay, fine. So the reason I like courage to change is because it's really been my recovery. And I didn't come here willing to change. So to back up just a little bit, just to give you a little bit of who I am and how I got here. I grew up in New York. My parents, I have a brother 2 years older than myself, and at any given opportunity, he would scare me half to death, and he would always rat me out. So I didn't learn to trust when I was very young. So I started, and then I used to walk to school with these two girls every day, and I didn't like school. I found school very boring. I didn't like it, so I didn't do very well. And every day I'd walk to school with these two girls who were very smart, and they would tell me how stupid I was. And I believed it. But I also found that if I let people in, they could hurt me. They could hurt me on the inside. My father used to give me lectures at night. You know, he never hit me. I used to go, Dad, just hit me and get it over with, you know, instead of the lecture that would like reverberate in my brain for the rest of the evening. So I started very young to start to build a lot of walls, and I hated me. I hated me, I hated you, and reality scared the shit out of me. And I found that when I started to build some walls and I started to keep you out, I thought it would really keep me safe. And I started to build an image, and I became a prisoner of my own image that I created, that I thought I had to live within. And I wanted you to believe that I had no feelings. And I wanted you to believe that I ate nails for breakfast and I had ice in my veins. And that anything you could do, like, you know, never see them, never see you cry, never see, you know, let them see you sweat. So I lived like that for a long time. I always thought, I really liked playing with trains. I liked playing in the creek. My mother would get pissed at me because I usually came home because I'd fall in the creek and my clothes would be wet. So I was very much a tomboy. I played softball when I was a kid, and I wasn't a girly girl at all. And but yet I like being a woman. I like being feminine, but I'm not. You'll never see me with a bow in my hair. Like somebody, I was just in the ladies' room, and I'm like always sniffling a damage or whatever it is, and somebody said, are you crying? And I said, no, I don't do that. I said, even when I need to cry, I don't cry. And she says, well, you know, when I was 5 years clean, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, I'm still waiting. It hasn't happened. Although we went to Coca-Cola today and they had all their commercials and I got all teary at the commercials, but yet my own pain, I don't cry. I go into a mode and I shut down. And so, you know, I always thought that I was courageous. I always thought I had a lot of courage. I always did really things. I ended up in places I had no business being in. You know, my parents taught me right from wrong, and they taught me values and morals. And I just, you know, my using was about finding ways and means to get more, and I lived to use and I used to live. And, you know, when I started using, I was, I don't know, like 12 years old, and I started selling joints in the schoolyard. And you know, and I didn't stop dealing. I wasn't very successful, but I didn't stop dealing until I stopped using, you know, which was 20 something years later. So I got here and, you know, I got my first motorcycle. It was 1970 was my first motorcycle. I was 19 years old. And I'm still riding. I don't ride like I used to, but I'm still riding, and I've ridden cross country, and you know, and that's what I'm passionate about. And I was always very handy. So now I come here, you know, I used, and my using became, you know, it was one time fun, and it became like my worst enemy. And it became like a really bad job that I had to get up every day and I had to do because I had to survive. And using was no longer fun. And through a series of events, I was introduced or suggested to go talk to some doctor who I didn't know was an addict. And I walked in his office and I said, I think I have a little drug problem. And he proceeded to tell me that I was an addict and that I suffered from the disease of addiction. And it wasn't the 10th or the 100th one that would kill me. He said it was the first one that would kill me. And I decided to go check myself into this detox. And I thought I'd clean out for 30 days. And I thought in that 30 days, I'd learn how to socially use, and I would come back out and I could use on the weekends and I could function during the week. And while I was in there, I found out that that I did have the disease of addiction. And if I didn't want to pay the consequences of the pain that I was in when I got there, then I just didn't have to use just one day at a time. It was about just not picking up one day at a time. And I didn't really want to be here, but I didn't want to be out there anymore, you know, and I just sat here and I didn't even know where I was. I used to go to a place and they had a lot of different meetings. They had NA meetings certain nights, and then they had other fellowship meetings other nights. And the only difference I knew was that people dressed better on the other nights. And I had not an idea of where, I didn't have a clue of where I was sitting. And I started to, you know, you talking about we came, you know, the second step, we came to believe. And it was the process of we came and we came to, and I needed to come to before I could come to believe. You know, before I could come to believe there was a power greater than me. I thought I was the greatest power there was. You know, I thought the world evolved around me because I thought I had all the answers. I could tell you how to live and I didn't have a clue. So I come here and I sat and I didn't want to talk to people. I was not one of those. I wasn't going to go up to you and go, hi, I'm Nancy, I'm an addict, can I have your phone number? It was like if people didn't reach a hand out and say, you know, we're going to coffee, why don't you come? You know, I would have just sat someplace. And some girl one time asked me for my phone number, and she called me and she says, you want to come with me? And I'm going to a committee meeting for activities. And she like saved my life. And I came here and I just had this huge wall, and I didn't smile and I wasn't happy. And I didn't even know I was alive, but I was existing. And I was like that for a very long time. I didn't get a sponsor right away. I didn't take all the suggestions. The only thing I did right is I didn't use. And I went to a lot of meetings. I'm not talking to you guys over there. I know you too well. So I'm going to just talk to you guys over here. You all heard me before. My peeps from Florida. So, so I sat in meetings and I just kept showing up. And I don't know, I was 3 months clean and I got a woman to sponsor me and she was very spiritual. She always said, you pray. And I called her up one day and I said, listen, this guy really pissed me off and I want to kill him. And she goes, pray for him for 2 weeks. And I went, pray for him? I want to kill him. Right. So I started my prayer. I took my suggestion and the suggestion from her and I prayed. Not very nice. Certainly wasn't spiritual at all. I can't even repeat the things I said, but I started to pray. And when I was done after about 2 weeks, I was at least nicer. So, and I never spoke to him again. She was way too spiritual for me. I had to let her go. I couldn't handle it. I was not there on that level, one iota. So for the next few months, I'm looking for another sponsor, and I see this woman come in who's looks like she could probably kick my ass. And I said, I think I need her to sponsor me. Well, she was my sponsor for the next 8.5 years. And she was exactly what I needed at that time. She told me what to do. She told me to sit down, shut up, you don't know anything, pick up after yourself. You made a mess, you clean it up. I was not her friend. It was not till I had a year clean that she allowed me into her life at all. And she became my best friend, my sponsor, like my mother, my sister, my traveling buddy, my laughing buddy. But she didn't help my self-esteem grow. She used to ask me, what did I screw up today? I'd call her up. One day I was crying. My father died when I was 20. And I thought I saw my father walking down the street and jam me up. And I was like a mess. And I came home and I'm crying and I call her up and she goes, well, what'd you fuck up now? And I went, it didn't help me to grow in that area of self-esteem, self-worth, anything, because she used to front me in front of people. And, I didn't know that there was another way. Until you know there's something different, you don't know there's anything different. So to me, it was kind of normal. It felt normal to me. And I still had this hard exterior and I'm an animal person, and I have a ton of love and compassion and empathy for animals, not people. I never had anything for people. Forget babies. That was a whole different subject. But people, I didn't even like people. I had no compassion for humans. I thought if you felt bad, it's whatever you created, and I didn't know how to have compassion. And I didn't know how to have empathy. Talk about spiritual principles. I didn't have any, except that I was willing. I was clean and I was willing. That was like my only 2 assets I had. And so I just kept showing up though. I got involved in service. I worked steps and I grew and I changed on big, blatant areas. Like I opened my blinds in my house. I got up and I went to a job. I learned about having a commitment. And if I said I would do something, I was told if I didn't stand for my word, I would fall for anything. So I learned that my word is everything. So things like that, I learned how to be a daughter to my mother. I learned how to be a sister to my brother. I learned how to be a friend. But I was missing like a lot of things. And I didn't have any courage to change any of that. I didn't have any courage to step out of that image I had. It was my whole everything. Growing up in New York, I used to go down to the city and my dad would say, don't make eye contact, because once you make eye contact, you're in trouble. Okay, so then he would say, and don't walk next to the buildings, they might pull you and you walk by the sidewalk. So I developed a face and an attitude and an air and an arrogance that said, stay away from me, because I can kick your ass before you could kick mine. And whether that was the truth or not, I couldn't tell you. I had an attitude, and I walked like that, and I carried that attitude I practiced that principle in all my affairs in recovery. I reached a hand out to newcomers. I started sponsoring people, but I was as hard and judgmental and critical and controlling to my sponsees as my sponsor was to me, because I freely gave that what was given to me, I freely gave to them. And if you didn't do what I said, I'd have a fight with you on the phone. Not good. I do not sponsor anything that even resembles that anymore. And so what happened was, for 8.5 years clean, I walked around like this. I didn't smile. I did smile, but I didn't want to smile really in public. I didn't want you to see that I could have a good time and laugh and be kind of open and vulnerable. So my sponsor and I, she was very funny. We would laugh a lot, and I would have fun, and I'd have fun with my friends. But out there, and I'd walk into a meeting, it was, I had a job. First I had this job, and I worked at a pest control place, and there was a whole crew of men that worked in the tent. Anyway, I'd walk in the door, and they'd like Heil Hitler me, because everybody was afraid of me. And I used to have a lot of people used to come, oh my God, I'm so intimidated by you. And I used to like it. I don't like it anymore. And now I go like, why do they say that? And people sometimes say, you need to lighten up. Are you kidding? You have no idea where I come from. I am light. This is light. I used to share in a meeting. I never smiled, and I would tell you how happy I am. I'm really happy, and I'm really having fun in recovery. Thank God for growth and change and staying clean. So I worked the first step, and I could admit I was powerless over everything. At first I wasn't powerless over people, though, because I thought I knew better. I thought I could, I know better how you should be acting than you know. I've learned very different, because when I am no longer powerless, my life is totally unmanageable. So if I can let go and I'm powerless, my life is manageable. And then, we came and I came to believe that Narcotics Anonymous was definitely a power greater than myself. And that was my first higher power. And I didn't believe in God. I didn't come from a God home. I thought, if there was God, how come my dad was, killed in this horrible accident? And why does bad things happen? When I realized that, I used to do a lot of work on that with my sponsor. And one day she says, well, maybe his task was just done, and he needed to move to do another task. And that sat okay with me. So I stopped blaming God. So when I got to the third step, and she had told me to write on a loving God, and I did a lot of having a God of my understanding that I don't always understand, but I believe that God of my understanding is just really our spiritual principles. And that's how I really do the best that I can to live from. Having a God in my life, it was a lot of work for me to do to come to that place and to really trust. And I remember when I had done an 11th step, and, my sponsor says, pray for the knowledge of God's will, the power to carry that out. It was like, but what if he doesn't know the right thing from me? And I didn't have that trust. I didn't really trust. So, my recovery has been my recovery. It's been a very slow process. I see people today that are clean, 3 years, and they're like, all this, God and spiritual principles, and they're loving and trusting. And I'm like, really? How do you do that? It took me so long. So I was 8.5 years clean, and I had a much better contact with the God of my understanding. And because I have God in my life, and I remember my sponsor told me the qualities that like a higher power needed to have was to be loving and caring. And I truly believe today, God doesn't judge. God doesn't judge. And God allows me to be whoever I want to be. And God allows me to be a good person, and God allows me not to be such a good person. As soon as I'm willing to do something, to be and live really in a spiritual principle of God's will, then God is there for me. But I'm not getting, not going to hell because I did something wrong or I wasn't such a good person. So I truly believe that, I have this loving God in my life that doesn't judge me, that always gives me the ability to have courage. And I trust in that process. I trust that whatever I do, and I'm doing it with a healthy motive, and I'm doing it out of care and love and growth for myself, that it's God's will. So I was like 8.5 years clean, and I had made a decision to do something in my life, and I felt very judged by my sponsor. And if I feel judged, I don't trust. And if I can't trust my sponsor, I don't have a sponsor. If I'm talking about the weather and my bullshit in my life, like anything really significant, like work or a couch or, something very surface, I don't have a relationship with a sponsor. I have to be able to share with my sponsor. I truly believe what we say, that as I'm as sick as my secrets. And if I don't share my secrets, I stay sick. So I needed to walk away from that relationship with that sponsor. And I let it go, and I asked somebody to sponsor me that was totally the opposite of this woman. And they were the most loving. They had such incredible unconditional love. I never, ever felt like I could pick up the phone and I was ever judged. And they always encouraged me to be me. Whatever I wanted that to be, they always encouraged me to move forward and take a risk and to do things. So what happened was I had someone in my life that was very out there, very goofy, huggy. They were always hugging people. They were dancing like crazy people on this, out there. And people thought, because, sometimes when you hang out with certain people think you're the same way. So people started hugging me, and I was like, oh my God. I went to my first convention. I was 6 months clean, and some woman hugged me a really long time. And I was squirming, and she goes, oh, is it your first convention? I wanted to knock her out, but it was. And I was so uncomfortable. And I'm not a hugger. I'm really much better than I ever was. So don't be afraid to come and hug me. People are always afraid after I share, and they go, can I hug you? Yes, you can hug me. Just I'm not doing a 10-minute hug. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to some retreat and we're going to do a 10-minute hug. No, it's not happening. I'm not putting on a birthday hat at some birthday party. Not me. So I'm really okay with myself today. And I know my limits. You may not, but I do. So anyway, so people started hugging me, and I started laughing. I thought she was funny, and I was laughing in public. So and every time I would laugh, I'd go, oh my God. And my whole body would get stiff, and my hair would stand up, and I'd cringe because I didn't know who this person was. I started to change. I started to really have an incredible change on the inside. I started to, I remember the first time that I cared, that I hurt somebody's feelings. And it was some newcomer, young girl, and I snapped at her and I hurt her feelings. And I never cared that I hurt somebody's feelings. In fact, I used to make me feel better about myself. That's where I come from. And it didn't make me feel better about myself. I felt really bad about myself. And I apologized to her. And it was the first time that I really was aware of a change, of a huge change on the inside. Not about opening my blinds and getting up and going to work and taking a shower and brushing my teeth. It wasn't about that. It was about our literature talks about having a profound personality change. And because I had God in my life, I was able to take little baby steps. So sometimes I felt like my skin was wide open and I was totally vulnerable. And it was very scary for me. very scary to step out of that image and let you really see who I am, you know, I started to have like a lot of compassion and empathy for human beings. And I started to really care and love people, like a lot of people. You know, I didn't want to be intimidating anymore. I didn't want to be scary to people anymore. You know, I mean, don't think that I'm kindness is not a weakness, you know. But I have become a loving, caring person, you know. So thank you. I have a lot of people in my life that I truly love, and it just amazes me. You know, I've been listening to you know, a lot of speakers here, and I got to tell you, you know, I have 33 years clean. I feel like a baby around here, you know, because I am a baby around here. And it's funny because I was always like the baby in the group. I was always had the least amount of clean time in all the people I hung out with. And I still look at myself like that. I still don't see myself like, you know, I mean, yeah, 33 years is a long time and it's significant. But I guess because I want to stay teachable. I always want to stay and have questions. I got to tell you, I walk around dazed and confused. I heard somebody earlier say something that, you know, when an old timer goes to a meeting and they're in pain and they can't share. I don't want that ever to be me. I am not walking on any water. I hurt. I go through struggles. I go through confusion. I don't know how to live life sometimes the way life shows up. I have new situations, and I call my sponsor all the time. I call people that have been here before me. My mother is 92, and I'm there for her all the time. She is a priority in my life. She does not live with me. My mother's very awesome. She gets up in the morning, and she's always put together. And she goes and she plays cards. She goes to lectures. She goes to whatever she can. She has people she talks to. She plays different card games. She's upset because one of them, she's short a partner, and you know, and her husband passed away like 10 years ago. And since 10 years ago, I call her every day. And I don't want her to, because my brother lives in Las Vegas, he calls her once a week. I don't want my mother ever feel like she's alone in this world. So I let her know that I'm always here. And when I can, I go there. She lives a half an hour from me. It's not that far, but she's very busy. Mom, what are you doing today? I'm very busy. I have this to do, that to do. Okay, well, I'll talk to you another day. We'll get together maybe Sunday, or I'll come one night. We'll just have dinner, you know, and I'll leave. So my mother was a teacher in that when shit happens, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you move forward. You know, which is a lesson in perseverance, which is our principle of the 10-step. And it's a principle she practices in all her affairs. You know, I watched her at 42 years old and 20-something years of being married to my father, and she made a decision to walk away from that relationship. And it wasn't easy for her. And she was, you know, she didn't know what to do. She wasn't, you know, hadn't been single in years. And she, you know, but she kept moving forward. She kept moving forward. And so I learned a lot of that from her, that, you know what, when things happen, and there was a guy that when I was new and I'd sit, my first home group was Vital Connections, 1 in the afternoon in North Miami Beach. And I would sit there every day because I wasn't capable of working. So I would sit at this place every day. And I heard this guy share every day, and he used to go, it takes balls to stay clean. And I go, yeah, I got balls. You know? And it kept me clean for a long time. And then he says, you know, when shit happens, you pick your ass up, you dust it off, put it in a basket, and you go to a meeting. And I heard that stuff, and I learned that stuff. And unfortunately, he was 36 years clean. I think it was a few years ago. And I don't know, for whatever reason, he decided to blow his brains out. And I was like, but what happened to putting your ass in a basket and going to a meeting? I don't want that to happen to me. And I know that he had moved to a place where there weren't a lot of meetings available, and I don't know what he was doing. And I don't want that to be me. I need, Narcotics Anonymous has given me the ability to have a life. It's given me the ability to be me. As a result of working the 12 steps and being able to change, I changed my license plate on my motorcycle. It says free to be me. And that is a freedom. And I got that here because I worked steps, because I got involved in service. And I learned to freely give back what was freely given. And I feel that it's my responsibility, as I feel that it's our, and I don't like talking about you, we, they, and us, and our, but I do believe it is our responsibility as recovering addicts sitting in a meeting to always reach a hand out to those that need. And especially the newcomer. There was a guy in the meeting, I don't know if he's here, that had 2 months clean. And that's pretty awesome. And I hope people reached out to him and said, hey, come here. Because I think a lot of the fellowship is the fellowship. It is the go to coffee. It is going to speaker jams. It is, going to dinner. And what are you doing tonight? And to include. I was with people that used to go, oh no, I don't like them. They can't come to dinner. And I'm like, really? I don't want to be that person. So I don't, somebody the other day says, I've been trying to get close to you and your clique. And I go, wait a minute. I don't have a clique. My understanding of a clique is that we don't allow anybody in. And that's not me. Me, I go to dinner after a meeting. I don't care who comes. You're all welcome. You're all paying for yourselves. You're all welcome. I'm certainly not paying for you, but you're all welcome. But I don't want to leave anybody out. I know what that is to be left out. I had a sponsor once, and when I was no longer in that sponsorship family, and we were at a convention in Virginia, and they were all going out to dinner. And I'm standing on the sidewalk, and I watched them all get in the car and all drive by me. And I wasn't included because it wasn't in the sponsorship family anymore. So when I do sponsorship things, and I've done sponsorship things, and if you're there then, and you're not there later, you're always welcome to be a part of. Because I don't want anybody to feel that pain that I had, because that was painful. Like I said, I came here and didn't give a shit about hurting people's feelings. And the courage to change is because I have steps in my life. I have a God in my life because I have a sponsor in my life. I have friends in my life. And I don't have just sponsees in my life. I have friends in my life. I have peers. One of my oldest, dearest friends is not an addict in recovery. He actually drove me to detox. And he came with me to my very first meeting that I went to after detox. I call him my twisted sister. He stood up for me at my wedding. I got married 6 years ago. My husband's over here. He's in recovery. And I could never have a relationship. Somebody else mentioned, that we used to pick out people and then you'd end a relationship and then you pick somebody else and they're exactly the same person as the other person. Well, it was really me that needed to change. I needed, number one, not to just change who I was picking, but I needed to change how I was. And there was another thing that I had to have the courage to change. I would welcome somebody in my home, but don't move anything. Don't change anything. Don't move anything. This is the way it's done. This is the way it has to be. This is the way I do it. So that means you have to do it that way. Not a good way to have a relationship with another human being, especially, people come from different places. And I, was able to grow and change. And I was minding my own business one day and I was speaking at a meeting and in comes this man and I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. But 3 years later, he asked me to marry him. We had a beautiful wedding. I was going to have a black lace wedding gown made because that's what I wanted, because I only wear black. My whole closet's a black hole. Wear a little gray sometimes. And my twisted sister said, do you want to look like you're wearing a beautiful evening gown or do you want to look like a bride? And I ended up and I got a wedding gown. And we got married in a cathedral. And we had an amazing wedding. and we're married. And who would have ever thought? And we made a commitment, and we made a commitment because that's what it is. It's a commitment. And I never, ever thought I would ever find somebody. You know, I had a desire to find, you know, I really wanted to know what that was like to have somebody to share your life with. And I have a partner, you know, that I share my life with. And it's pretty incredible, you know, that blows me away. So, you know what, I think I'm almost, my time is kind of up. I'm very grateful that I was here. I'm grateful you guys are here. I can't believe how friendly people are. I mean, I walk around, forget just coming from New York, but Miami's the same thing. Nobody talks to anybody. You all like come up, hi, how are you? I'm so-and-so. And I go, oh, I'm Nancy, you know, and I met more people here probably in a day than I know in my, no, that's not true. But, you know, at the point, if I stayed here, I'd know more people because everybody's very nice and very friendly. So I feel very welcomed. We were just at a convention in California and I didn't feel very welcomed at all. It wasn't a good feeling, did not feel good. I feel very warm and welcomed, especially from all the women here. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank the committee. I'm so grateful I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you.